Princess Lyra stood alone in the royal garden of her home planet, Xenos. The stars glittered above her like diamonds, each one holding a world far beyond her reach. The moonlight shimmered on her silvery skin, casting an ethereal glow around her. As the crown princess of Xenos, she had everything a being could ever desire: wealth, power, beauty, and an entire planet to rule. Yet there was one thing she lacked: freedom. She had been raised to believe that the people of Earth were weak. Humans, with their short lifespans, fragile bodies, and primitive technology, were beneath her kind. They were nothing more than creatures to be studied from afar, never to be interacted with. But lately, Lyra's thoughts had begun to change. Each day, she found herself growing more and more captivated by the stories of these strange creatures called humans. Her advisors would often speak of them, explaining their struggles and their unexpected moments of bravery. Lyra had listened with growing curiosity, but it was the humans' resilience that had caught her attention the most. There was a fire within them, a spirit that refused to be broken. Unlike the people of Xenos, who lived in a world of peace and luxury, humans fought for survival. But it was one human, in particular, who had stolen her thoughts. Ethan Carter, a soldier, a man who had led a mission against an alien invasion. Lyra had watched him from afar, learning about his strength, his courage, and the way he fought with an unbreakable will. He wasn't like the others. Ethan was a leader, respected by his comrades, but it was more than his bravery that drew Lyra to him. It was the way his eyes burned with a quiet intensity, as if they held a deep, unspoken pain. No matter how many times Lyra tried to suppress her feelings, they only grew stronger. Her desire for him was something she couldn't ignore, something she could no longer fight. She had never known such an overwhelming pull before, not even with the most powerful beings of her own world. But this was different. It wasn't just his strength or courage that fascinated her. It was something deeper, a human emotion that she had never truly understood: love. Lyra knew what she was doing was dangerous. Her people, the people of Xenos, would never accept such a relationship. Humans were seen as inferior, and any connection with them was forbidden. Her father, the king, had made it clear that any interaction with Earth was to be avoided at all costs. The risk of war, the risk of contamination, was far too great. But how could she ignore the feelings that twisted inside her every time she thought of Ethan? The more she thought about him, the more the rules of her people felt like chains. She longed for something real, something she could call her own. Ethan was a mystery, a puzzle she was determined to solve. Yet, even as she imagined their paths crossing, she knew that her feelings could lead to disaster. She would have to be careful, secretive, but the temptation was too great to resist. One night, alone in her chambers, Lyra made a decision. She would travel to Earth. She would meet him. She didn't know how or when, but she would find a way. And when that moment came, she would face the consequences, because for the first time in her life, she knew what she wanted. And nothing, not even the rules of her people, could stop her. But would Ethan feel the same way? Or would he be the one to turn her away, rejecting the forbidden love between an alien princess and a human soldier? The journey to Earth would be full of risks, but Lyra was ready to face them all. The question was she ready to face what awaited her on Earth? And in her heart, Princess Lyra stood at the control panel of her sleek spacecraft, her heart racing as she prepared to leave Xenos behind. The stars stretched out before her like a vast ocean, and the dark expanse of space seemed to call to her, urging her to move forward. She glanced at the small holographic map on the screen. Earth was still far away, but within reach. She had spent weeks planning this moment, studying Earth's atmosphere, its cities, its technology. Every detail mattered. Yet, despite all her preparation, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. She was about to break a rule that had been set by her people for centuries, a rule that forbade any interaction with Earth. But her longing for Ethan, her deep desire to see him with her own eyes, drowned out the voice of caution. Lyra's fingers hovered over the ship's controls as she prepared for the journey. The powerful engines hummed beneath her feet, and the ship began to rise from the surface of Xenos, leaving behind the only home she had ever known. The weight of her decision settled heavily on her chest. There was no turning back now. As the ship ascended through Xenos' atmosphere, Lyra watched the planet shrink below her. It was a beautiful sight. Lush green forests, shimmering oceans, towering cities, but it didn't hold her attention the way Earth did. Her thoughts were already with the blue and green planet, the one where Ethan lived, the one where everything was so different from Xenos. The more she learned about Earth, the more fascinated she became. There was something raw, something real about humanity that captivated her. It was as if the humans were constantly fighting against impossible odds, and that spirit was something she admired deeply. The journey would take several days, but Lyra didn't mind. She wasn't in a rush. She spent her time studying Earth, learning about its cultures, its people, and its history. The more she learned, the more she felt drawn to the human world. But she also knew that things wouldn't be easy. The moment she stepped onto Earth, she would be breaking the laws of her own people. If she was caught, there would be severe consequences. She could be exiled, or worse, imprisoned. But all of that seemed distant, as though it belonged to someone else's story. Lyra's thoughts were consumed by Ethan. She imagined what it would be like to meet him, to see him face to face. What would he think of her? Would he be afraid of her alien appearance? Or would he, like her, feel the connection that had been growing between them since the first moment she saw him? Suddenly, the peaceful silence of space was broken by a sharp beep from the ship's control panel. Lyra's eyes snapped to the screen. A warning light flashed in bright red, indicating an approaching object. An unidentified ship. She muttered under her breath, her heart pounding. She quickly scanned the data. Earth's defense systems were detecting her presence. She had expected some kind of resistance, but not this quickly. The human world was much more advanced than she had thought. The Earth government had already spotted her ship, and they were coming for her. Lyra's fingers tightened around the controls. She couldn't afford to be caught. If she was discovered now, her mission would fail before it even began. She needed to cloak her ship immediately. With a swift press of a button, the ship's cloaking device activated, surrounding it with an invisible shield. For a moment, everything seemed calm again, but the threat was far from over. The human defense ships would continue to search, and Lyra had no idea how much time she had left before they found her. Her mind raced. She could turn back, return to Xenos, and forget about Ethan. But something inside her refused. This was the moment she had been waiting for, and no matter the danger, she was determined to continue. Earth was her destination, and nothing, not even the threat of capture, could stop her now. As she steered her ship deeper into Earth's atmosphere, Lyra's thoughts returned to Ethan. Soon, she would be on the same planet as him. Soon, she would see the man who had captured her heart. And no matter the cost, she would find him. But with Earth's defense systems closing in, would she get the chance to meet him at all? Or would the secrets of her world remain hidden from him forever? Lyra's heart raced as she steered the ship lower into Earth's atmosphere. The rush of entering a new world was exhilarating, yet every fiber of her being warned her of the danger that lay ahead. Her cloaking device was still working, keeping her ship invisible to the prying eyes of Earth's defense systems, but she knew that her window of safety was closing fast. She watched as the landscape of Earth unfolded below her. Vast cities, sprawling fields, towering mountains. The world was beautiful in its own way, yet it was the humans that Lyra found most fascinating. The people she had heard so much about, the ones who fought to survive despite their weaknesses, their struggles, their short lifespans. Everything about them was so different from her own kind, so alive. And there, somewhere on this planet, was Ethan Carter, the man she had spent countless nights thinking about. The ship descended slowly, its engine humming quietly as she looked for a place to land. Her thoughts flickered back to the decision she had made. to leave behind the luxury and safety of her life on Xenos to seek out a single human soldier. Would Ethan understand her, or would he see her as just another alien invader? Could he feel the same connection she had to him? After a long moment, Lyra spotted a small, secluded town nestled at the edge of a forest. The buildings were modest, their architecture simple and unassuming. It was the perfect place for her to land without drawing too much attention. The ship touched down gently on the outskirts of the town, its landing gear settling softly into the soft earth. Lyra took a deep breath and gazed out the small window of her ship. She had studied Earth's geography, and she recognized the area she had landed in. It was a rural region, far away from the bustling cities, but close enough to be within reach of human civilization. Her heart pounded in her chest as she prepared to step outside and walk among humans for the first time. But before she could make her move, a sudden sound broke the silence. A voice, faint but growing louder. A group of humans was approaching. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She quickly moved to the controls, activating the ship's cloaking system to its highest setting. The ship vanished from view, hidden from anyone who might pass by. She felt a rush of relief, but the moment was short-lived. There was no time to waste. She needed to blend in, to observe them and understand their ways before she could meet Ethan. Lyra stepped out of the ship cautiously, cloaked in a simple earth disguise that would allow her to pass unnoticed. She wore a hooded cloak, carefully designed to hide the unique features of her alien appearance. Her silver skin was now hidden beneath layers of fabric, her sharp features softened. She glanced around, noticing a small group of humans walking along the path ahead. They were chatting casually, unaware of her presence. Lyra moved quickly, staying in the shadows, her eyes scanning them with fascination. As she crept closer, her heart beat faster. Could one of these humans be Ethan? Could he be standing among them without her recognizing him? She scanned the group carefully. None of them stood out in any way that made them seem extraordinary. But there was one man whose presence made her pause. A soldier, dressed in civilian clothes, but with the unmistakable posture of someone who had seen battle. He carried himself with a quiet confidence that made her heart race. Lyra felt a strange pull in her chest, and she knew, deep down, that this man was the one she had been searching for. This was Ethan Carter. But she couldn't approach him yet. Not now. Not like this. The risk of revealing her true self was too great. Lyra knew that if she made a move, if she spoke to him now, it would be too soon. The humans might turn on her, and her mission would be over before it even began. So she watched him from the shadows, her eyes never leaving his figure. Ethan was exactly as she had imagined, strong, determined, with a look in his eyes that suggested a depth of emotion she had never fully understood. But she knew she had to wait. The time to speak with him would come, but it was not today. As she turned to leave, she felt a deep sense of longing. She had seen him. Ethan was real. He was here, on this planet, just as she had hoped. And no matter what happened next, Lyra knew one thing for certain. The journey had only just begun. Lyra spent the next few days carefully observing Ethan from the shadows, watching him in his everyday life. She learned where he went, what he did, and who he interacted with. But she kept her distance, never once revealing herself to him. The risk was too great. If anyone knew she was an alien, or worse, if Ethan found out, everything would fall apart. She continued to disguise herself as a simple Earth traveler, staying in the outskirts of town, far enough to avoid attention, but close enough to watch him. Her every thought seemed to circle around Ethan. She couldn't stop thinking about the way his eyes seemed to carry the weight of the world, yet he still fought. He was a soldier, but not just any soldier. He was a man with a heart, a deep kindness hidden beneath the armor of duty. But Lyra couldn't stay hidden forever. One afternoon, while Ethan was helping the villagers with some repairs after a recent storm, Lyra saw her chance. The sight of him working alongside the others, laughing with them, as though he was one of them, made her heart ache with longing. But it wasn't just his kindness that drew her to him. It was the way he stood out among the others. He was a leader, someone who had faced incredible odds and still remained strong. She couldn't keep away any longer. She had to talk to him. She had to know if the connection she felt was real or just her imagination. Lyra waited until the sun began to set, casting the village in warm golden light. As Ethan walked toward a small shop, she followed, her heart pounding in her chest. The streets were quieter now, and the shadows stretched long across the cobblestone roads. She kept her hood low, hoping to avoid recognition, though her silver hair was still visible underneath. Ethan entered the shop, and Lyra hesitated just outside. She took a deep breath. This was it. She had no idea how he would react, but she couldn't turn back now. Stepping into the shop, Lyra noticed Ethan at the counter, exchanging a few words with the shopkeeper. His voice was calm, soothing even, but it was when he turned that she felt her heart race. Their eyes met for the first time. His dark eyes locked with hers, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stop. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. There was something in his gaze, something familiar. The connection she had felt from the moment she learned of him now seemed to pulse between them. Ethan paused, sensing something was different. A slight frown appeared on his face, but then he quickly masked it with a friendly smile. "Can I help you with something?" His voice was warm, yet cautious, as if he wasn't sure whether she was a threat or just another traveler passing through. Lyra had to choose her words carefully. She couldn't reveal too much. "Not yet. I was just passing through," she said, her voice soft, attempting to sound as natural as possible. "I'm looking for shelter for the night." Ethan seemed to study her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded. "There's an inn just down the street. You can rest there for the night. You're safe here." His voice held a reassuring tone, but there was something in his eyes that told Lyra he wasn't entirely convinced by her story. She nodded, smiling politely. "Thank you." Before she could turn to leave, Ethan's gaze lingered on her. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked, a little too casually. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had to be careful. She had been raised to be cautious, to hide her true identity at all costs. But here, with him, she couldn't help but wonder if she was already too late. Her alien heritage, her silver skin, her glowing eyes, was impossible to hide forever. "No," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I'm from far away. Just passing through." Ethan nodded again, but this time his eyes narrowed slightly, as if he didn't entirely believe her. "Well, if you need anything, you can find me. I'm around." Lyra didn't say anything, unsure of how to respond. She simply nodded and turned to leave. As she stepped out of the shop, the weight of what had just happened hit her. She had come closer to Ethan than she ever had before, and yet she had said nothing. The truth still hung between them, unspoken, but she could feel his curiosity. He had sensed something was different about her, something that made him question her. Lyra's heart ached. She had hoped to keep her secret a little longer, to ease into the reality of being near him, but it was clear now that the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. What would happen when she revealed who she truly was? Would Ethan be afraid of her? Would he reject her because of what she was, or would he accept her for who she had become? She didn't know the answer, but one thing was certain: her feelings for him were real, and now the truth was out there, waiting to change everything. The next time they met, there would be no hiding. She would have to tell him the truth. The question was, what would he do with it? Lyra couldn't sleep that night. The conversation with Ethan kept replaying in her mind over and over. His eyes, so full of questions, had stayed with her long after she had left the shop. Despite her best efforts to remain hidden, she knew that her secret was already unraveling. Ethan was beginning to suspect something, and she could no longer pretend that she was just a traveler from far away. She had already come so close to him. There was no turning back now. The next day, she decided it was time to face him. The need to explain herself was overwhelming, and she knew that her mission wouldn't succeed unless she was completely honest. But even as she prepared to meet him again, a heavy doubt settled over her. What if he rejected her? What if her true identity caused him to fear her, to push her away, as her people feared humans? She couldn't afford to think like that. She had to believe that there was something between them, a connection strong enough to bridge the gap between their two worlds. Ethan was outside again, this time in a small clearing near the village where he was speaking to a few of the locals. Lyra had kept her distance, watching from behind the trees. He was more approachable today, his usual guard down as he smiled and laughed with the villagers. But Lyra knew this was the moment. She couldn't wait any longer. As she approached him, her heartbeat quickened, each step feeling like it echoed in the silence of the forest. When he saw her, his face softened slightly, but his gaze was cautious, as if he still wasn't sure what to make of her. "Lyra," he said, his voice calm but filled with curiosity. "You've been around here for a while now, haven't you? Is there something you need?" For a moment, Lyra hesitated. She could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her, but she knew it was time. She couldn't hide who she was anymore. Not from him. "I need to tell you something," Lyra said quietly, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "Something important." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What's going on?" He looked around, as if sensing the seriousness in her voice, but he didn't back away. Lyra looked into his eyes, trying to steady her nerves. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm not just a traveler." She took a deep breath. "I'm from another world." Ethan blinked, confusion clouding his features. "Another world?" His voice was calm, but there was a sharpness in his gaze. "You mean like a different country, or—" "No," Lyra interrupted gently. "I mean I'm from a planet far away. I'm an alien, a princess from a planet called Xenos." There was a long silence. Ethan stared at her, trying to process her words. For a moment, she thought he might laugh, or say she was crazy. But then, to her surprise, he took a step closer, his expression thoughtful rather than fearful. "An alien princess, huh?" Ethan said slowly, as if testing the words. "That's a lot to take in." He gave her a long look, as if searching for signs that she was lying. But Lyra could see in his eyes that he didn't find anything false in her words. He could sense she was being truthful. "So, you're not from around here," he continued, his voice softening. "You came to Earth for some reason. What is it that you want from us?" Lyra swallowed, the weight of the question pressing down on her. "I came here because I needed to know more about humans. About you." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I've watched you, Ethan. I've watched you fight for your people, for your world. I admire that strength. The way you stand up against impossible odds, no matter the cost. I've never seen anything like it. My people, we've never had to fight for survival. We've never had to push ourselves to the edge like humans do. And that's why I came here, to understand." Ethan remained silent, his expression unreadable. But then, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "So you're saying you came here to learn about humans, to understand us?" "Yes," Lyra replied. "But it's more than that. I came here because I can't stop thinking about you, Ethan, about who you are. I didn't expect this feeling, this connection. It's strange, but I can't deny it. I don't know how to explain it." Ethan's expression softened, and for the first time, Lyra saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I didn't expect this either. You're an alien princess from another world, and you're telling me you feel something for me. But—" he paused, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know if I can just ignore what you are. The world won't accept you. People don't trust aliens." Lyra nodded. She had known this would be difficult. But what she didn't expect was for Ethan to look at her as he did now, with something more than just curiosity in his eyes. He looked at her with a quiet understanding, a connection she hadn't anticipated. "I understand," she said softly. "I'm not asking for your people to accept me right now. I know that will take time, but I'm asking for a chance, for you to trust me, because there's more at stake than just my desire to learn about humans. My world is coming, Ethan. They're planning an invasion of Earth. I'm here to stop it. Ethan's eyes widened in shock. An invasion? But why? My people don't understand your world the way I do. They see humans as weak, as a species that can easily be conquered. But I've seen your strength. I've seen what you're capable of. I'm here to stop the war, to make sure your world isn't destroyed by mine. Ethan stepped back, his mind clearly racing. So, what are you asking from me? I need your help, Lyra said, her voice steady. Together, we can stop this before it's too late. But I can't do it alone. We'll have to work together, Ethan. For the sake of Earth. For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Then, finally, Ethan nodded. All right, he said, his voice firm. We'll work together. But we need to be careful. If anyone finds out what you are. I know, Lyra interrupted, her gaze meeting his. We'll keep it a secret for now. But we have to act fast. Time is running out. And just like that, an unspoken alliance was formed, one that would change both their lives and the fate of Earth forever. The days that followed were a blur of careful planning and quiet conversations between Lyra and Ethan. They met in secret, always in remote places far from the prying eyes of the village. The weight of their alliance hung heavily between them, but both knew it was their only chance to prevent the invasion of Earth. Lyra had told him everything she knew about her people's plans. The Xenosian fleet was nearing Earth, prepared to take over the planet, believing that humanity was weak and would submit easily to their superior technology. But Lyra had seen firsthand how Earth's resilience had grown, and she couldn't bear the thought of her people destroying something so full of life. The more time Lyra spent with Ethan, the more she realized just how much she had underestimated humans. Their resourcefulness, their ability to rise above fear and hardship, it was unlike anything she had ever seen among her own people. There was something raw and powerful about their determination that pulled at her heart. But as much as Lyra and Ethan worked together to formulate a plan, there were forces beyond their control that threatened to destroy everything. One evening, as Lyra and Ethan met near a quiet lake to discuss their next move, they were interrupted by an unexpected voice. You think you can stop us? The words were cold, commanding. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the voice. From the shadows, a tall figure stepped forward. An alien soldier, garbed in the sleek armor of the Xenosian military. His face was hidden beneath a helmet, but his posture was unmistakable. He was one of her own kind, but he wasn't here to help her. Lyra immediately stepped in front of Ethan, instinctively protecting him. What are you doing here? She demanded, her voice sharp. You shouldn't be on Earth. The soldier's eyes narrowed behind his helmet. The time for hiding is over. Princess, your little alliance with this human is a betrayal to Xenos. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Ethan stood beside her, his expression a mixture of confusion and tension. He was still adjusting to the idea of Lyra being a princess from another world, but seeing an actual alien standing before him, with hostile intent, was another shock entirely. What do you want? Lyra's voice was steady, but the fear inside her was undeniable. She knew that her people would stop at nothing to invade Earth, but she hadn't anticipated they would come this quickly. We came to remind you of your place, the soldier replied, his tone dripping with disdain. You think you can stop the invasion, but you're just a weak princess. You've betrayed your people, and now you'll pay for it. Lyra took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. I won't let you destroy this planet. I won't let my people destroy everything I've come to admire. The soldier's hand twitched toward the weapon at his side, but before he could draw it, Ethan stepped forward, his eyes burning with a mix of fear and determination. I don't know what's going on here, but I'll fight for Earth. You won't destroy us. Not while I'm standing. The alien soldier let out a laugh, low and mocking. You think you can stop us? You're just a human. Ethan stood his ground. I'm a soldier, and we fight for what matters. Lyra watched in awe as Ethan's bravery shone through. He was just a human, but in that moment, he was everything she needed him to be. Strong, unyielding, and willing to protect Earth at all costs. She couldn't help but feel that the bond between them had grown even stronger. The alien soldier's eyes flickered between Lyra and Ethan, clearly calculating his next move. But before he could act, Lyra's hand shot up, glowing with a soft, silvery light. The power of her people flowed through her, her gift of telekinesis sending a shockwave toward the soldier. The force of the blast knocked him back, but he recovered quickly, reaching for his weapon. Ethan, run! Lyra shouted, realizing that this confrontation was escalating faster than she could have predicted. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, the same one he had used to communicate with his military unit. No, we're doing this together, he said, his voice firm. We can stop them. I've got a plan. Lyra turned to him, surprised. What plan? Ethan didn't have time to explain. The alien soldier had recovered and was charging toward them, his weapon drawn. Without hesitation, Ethan tossed the device into the air, and a burst of blinding light filled the clearing. The signal had been sent. Lyra watched in disbelief as the soldier's armor flickered and sputtered, his weapon locking up as Earth's military forces arrived. A squadron of fighter jets, equipped with high-tech EMP weapons, descended from the sky, surrounding the soldier. This is the end of your mission, Xenosian, one of the pilots called over the comms. The alien soldier snarled, realizing too late that Ethan had anticipated this. With a growl of frustration, he activated his escape mechanism, disappearing into the shadows before the Earth forces could capture him. Lyra exhaled, her breath shaky with relief. The immediate danger had passed, but she knew this was just the beginning. There would be more of her people, more soldiers sent to Earth. The battle to protect Earth was far from over. Ethan turned to her, his eyes wide with disbelief. You knew they would come. Lyra nodded, her gaze dark. I knew they would try to stop us. But this is only a small part of what's coming. The invasion is still on, and my people will not give up until Earth is under their control. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then we fight. Together. Lyra nodded, her resolve hardening. Yes, together. In that moment, Lyra knew the path ahead would be filled with danger, but with Ethan by her side, she felt ready for whatever came next. The alliance they had formed was their only hope to save Earth, and she would fight until her last breath to protect the planet. And the man she had come to care for more than she ever imagined. The war was far from over, but now they were no longer alone in it. Days turned into weeks, and the situation grew more dangerous with each passing moment. Lyra and Ethan worked tirelessly, planning, strategizing, and preparing for the inevitable conflict with her people. Every moment they spent together strengthened their bond. Ethan's quiet courage and unshakable determination continued to inspire Lyra, while her own unique abilities, though initially alien to him, became something Ethan began to trust. The alliance they had forged was now a force to be reckoned with. Earth's military had begun to coordinate with Lyra's knowledge of Xenosian technology, using it to develop advanced defenses. She taught them how to counter the alien forces, how to understand their tactics, and how to disrupt their ships. But it wasn't just the technology that made the difference. It was their resolve, their unwillingness to back down. Still, every night, Lyra's heart grew heavier. Her people would not relent. She had learned that the Xenosian fleet was already in orbit around Earth, preparing to invade with overwhelming force. No matter how many battles they won, they were running out of time. The Xenosian Emperor, her own father, was ruthless in his pursuit of Earth. He would not stop until every last human had been conquered. One evening, as Lyra and Ethan stood together in a quiet command center, watching the live feeds from Earth's military satellites, She could feel the weight of the moment settling in. The final confrontation was near. "Lyra," Ethan said, his voice soft but resolute, "we're ready. We've built up enough defenses, and the EMP devices you helped us design will disrupt the Xenosian fleet. We can win this." Lyra looked at him, but her gaze was distant. "We've been preparing for so long, but I don't think people fully understand what's at stake. If we fail," her voice trailed off. The thought of Earth being destroyed, of Ethan, and everyone she had come to care for being wiped out by her own people, was unbearable. "You won't fail," Ethan said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've already done more than anyone could have asked of you. We've come this far together, and we'll finish it together." She met his eyes, the weight of his words grounding her. Despite the uncertainty, despite the fear that gnawed at her, she felt a spark of hope. Ethan believed in her. He believed in them. "We can't let them win," she whispered. The sound of a sudden alarm cut through the room, jolting both of them to attention. The display screen in front of them flickered, and an urgent message from Earth's command appeared. "Lyra," a voice crackled through the speakers. It was the leader of the Earth Defense Council. "Commander Harris, we've detected a massive Xenosian warship entering the atmosphere. They're beginning their attack. It's now or never." Lyra's breath hitched in her chest. It had come. The final battle had begun. "Ethan," she said, turning to him, her voice low but filled with determination. "This is it. We've got one chance to stop them." "I know," Ethan replied, his expression hardening with resolve. "We'll hit them with everything we've got." They both rushed to the command center's war room, where Earth's military leaders were already gearing up for the battle. Lyra's mind raced as she scanned the room. The plans they had made, the defenses they had prepared. It was all coming down to this moment. She had to make sure Earth survived. She had to make sure Ethan survived. "The Xenosian warship is massive," one of the officers explained. "It's carrying thousands of soldiers and enough firepower to level a city in minutes. But we've developed a new kind of EMP weapon based on Lyra's intel. If we can hit them at the right moment, we can cripple their systems." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'll guide you," she said, stepping forward. "I know their technology. I can help you pinpoint the weak spots in their defenses. But we have to move fast. If they get through, we won't have another chance." Ethan stood at her side, his hand brushing against hers, a silent promise that no matter what happened, they would face this together. The hours that followed were a blur of adrenaline, as Lyra and the Earth forces launched their coordinated strike. Ethan led a group of soldiers to deploy the EMP devices on key strategic points around the warship, while Lyra stayed in the command center, using her alien abilities to hack into the warship's systems and guide the humans to the critical weak spots. The battle raged overhead as Xenosian forces descended, but the human defenses held firm. Lyra's heart raced as she watched the massive ship in the sky. The EMPs, combined with her telekinetic guidance, were beginning to take effect. The warship shuddered, its systems flickering, its shields failing. But just as victory seemed within reach, a new wave of Xenosian reinforcements arrived, led by her father's flagship. The stakes had just been raised. This battle wasn't over yet. "Lyra," Ethan's voice came through her earpiece, frantic. "We need your help. They're launching a counterattack. If we don't stop them, we'll lose everything." Lyra's eyes locked onto the screen, her mind racing. She could feel the power of the Xenosian fleet pressing down on them. But she also felt the strength of the humans, the power of their will to fight back. They had come this far. She couldn't let them fall now. "I'm going to do it," Lyra said, her voice calm but filled with a resolve that surprised even her. "I'm going to stop them." Without waiting for a response, she concentrated, reaching deep into the heart of the Xenosian fleet's power source. Her powers surged, her connection to the warship's systems growing stronger. The feedback from the ship's energy systems was overwhelming, but she pushed through, her alien strength bolstering her as she directed every ounce of energy into a final desperate attack. The Exynotion warship groaned under the pressure, and with one final, overwhelming burst of power, Lyra sent a shockwave through the fleet. Systems began to fail, shields fell, and weapons were disabled. The invasion was over. The silence that followed was deafening. Lyra collapsed to her knees, exhaustion sweeping over her. But in the distance, she could see it. The Exynotion fleet retreating. The Earth's skies were safe once more. Ethan rushed to her side, his face filled with relief. "We did it," he whispered, helping her to her feet. She nodded, tears of relief and exhaustion welling in her eyes. "We did." The war was over. Earth had been saved, and Lyra had finally found a place where she truly belonged, not just on her planet, but with Ethan and the humans who had fought beside her. The world was at peace, for now. But as she looked into Ethan's eyes, she knew one thing for certain. Together, they could face anything.